the jury. The prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Friday, March 1st, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host in studio, my son, Joe Hagmann. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, analysis, information that you need to know in these very perilous times. Folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us at our home base on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. You can watch Joe tonight and then beginning on Monday, both of us in high-def video, as we simulcast in high-def video on the Christians United Broadcasting Network. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We want to thank you for your belief, your trust in us as we walk through this mess of news together. We're just so thankful to have you as our listener base, and we want to thank everyone who has helped us stay on the air through your financial support, through your word of mouth support, through your prayers, through your suggestions via email, how to make the show better. We're taking them all to heart and implementing some new things as well. But anyway, just want to welcome you tonight to the program. Joe, how you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing very well, and I don't know how I sound.
I can't hear you.
You can't? That's because I'm on mute.
There we go.
I'm doing better. Fine. Glad to be here. This is a Friday show. A lot of news to get into. Also, the beginning of the month. The title of the show, March In and Out Like a Lion, was your idea. You want to expand on that?
Well, you know what, folks? I kind of do, actually. And, I had long conversations with a couple of my sources today, both with the Department of Homeland Security and other intelligence agencies. And it's interesting because these sources, both from the various agencies, are beginning now to say the same things. What I mean by that is we are to start anticipating what is about to take place or what is destined to take place and act accordingly. We are to act responsibly. We are to ready ourselves responsibly. We are to anticipate what is coming, and that's wisdom. Is anticipation in action. And right now there is a period of relative calm, I suppose. The calm before the storm. And I had asked, for example, I had asked my contacts on so many questions because so much needed to be asked. But what exactly? Where do we stand? And the one thing that was stated, the two-party system. For example, the Republicans versus Democrats, or the progressives versus the conservatives, so-called conservatives. Well, look at the change. There's no change. There's no difference between parties at this point. Look at what's taking place. And one individual, a good friend of mine, told me a story about a friend of a friend. Now, I'm not going to get into the story because I'm not even sure how. Of course, there's no way of really tracing this back. So, imagine this, though. Imagine you going to the doctor, and your doctor just comes right out and says, "Look, you've got 4 to 6 weeks to live because you've got this really bad cancer. and it's very aggressive, and it's going to kill you. There's nothing we can do for you at this point. Now, how would you feel? And I know that sounds like, wow, this is such a downer. Obviously, this is such a bad news. But don't think of it that way. Think about what you would do with the period of time that you have, knowing the fact that you don't have that there's no turning back. In other words, there's nothing you can do at this particular point in time to cure your disease, to reverse your disease. You're terminal. It's going to take place. You are going to succumb to your disease. And what would you do? Well, at that point, you don't have any more. You don't have time for any more lies. You don't have any time for anything else but this narrow focus on getting your affairs in order. Accept the situation. Accept the fact that you're in that position. It does, and you just have to act. Not only for yourself, but imagine having children and perhaps even grandchildren. What would you do for them? And in a way, that was conveyed to me in that fashion. Now, I'm not doing my source any. Obviously, what I'm saying here is he certainly tells a lot better than me. But this is where we are right now. I believe after listening to the all of the information from the sources. But here's a little bit more detail on this. As we look back in time, we've had reasons for us getting into World War One, the sinking of the Lusitania, for example, World War Two, Pearl Harbor, the Vietnam War, Gulf of Tonkin, 9/11 jump-started and accelerated that war machine agenda. Just like February 1933, the false flag at Reichstag led to the Enabling Act. So too did the events of 9/11 lead to the various Patriot Act and the various policies and laws that are leading to the erosion of our rights. And Joe, you and I were talking about this earlier, were we not? I mean, look how quickly things have progressed. Look at the last several decades. And then look at the last 10 years, and look at the last 4 years or 5 years. Joe, I mean, there's been quite a difference, hasn't there? I mean, quite an acceleration.
Absolutely, there has. And it's an engineered acceleration by an engineered plan. And there was a video, it was about 17 minutes long. You can go on YouTube and search for it. It's called Global Banker Admits We Engineered the Whole Thing.
Right.
I don't know how many of you guys saw that, but if you didn't, I would search for that and watch it. And they admit to engineering the beginning and the collapse of the currency. And they're talking about the dollar.
Well, and Joe, and I want to say this, I'm so thankful for Judy McLeod and Brian at Canada Free Press and Kiko up there, because for printing the article I wrote about the first part, and the second part I hope to have done and out tomorrow. I'm going to work on it, and hopefully we'll have it shaped up, buttoned up, polished up. And I want to thank Marianne for her hard work as well. God bless you, Marianne. I didn't give you a fair shake today on the phone. I apologize. It's just been one of those days. But anyway, during my research, I was amazed because what I found, I mentioned Paul Warburg in that first article. And Paul Warburg was an immigrant from Germany here in America, and his position, what he had done with the Federal Reserve, and I'm amazed, ladies and gentlemen. Even so-called, even people who proclaim to get into, like, the investigation of the Federal Reserve, some people who have programs, whether they're radio programs or whether they're TV programs or whatever, They claim to get into the Federal Reserve or things like it, but you know what? They stop at a certain point because the rest is conspiracy nonsense. Well, wow. Let me just read something to you very briefly. It's 2 sentences here. This was part of an address by Paul Warburg on February 17th, 1950, during an address to the United States Senate. Now think about this. Here's a finance guy, Paul Warburg, addressing the United States Senate, February 17th of 1950, 63 years ago. He says this: "We shall have a world government, whether or not we like it. The only question is whether the world government will be achieved by conquest or consent." How'd you know that?
I was on mute, but yeah, I finished your statement because I've heard that quoted many times. They will have the New World Order, whether by consent or conquest or vice versa. And this is something Zbigniew Brzezinski writes about in that book, I've Destroyed Totalitarian Dictatorship and Autocracy. And one chapter in it is the directed economy, total bureaucratization.
Well, Joe, I got to tell you this. I'm amazed because the very things I'm amazed that people can get on behind the cameras or behind the microphones and say, "Well, we're going to talk about." For example, we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve, but we're not going to get into conspiracy theories. Yet, all of these statements about, well, Rockefeller, Warburg, the various people, the architects of our current system right now, it's on record. None of this is theory. This is fact. So why run away from fact? You know, Nixon, and I want to just...
And why run away from fact? Because as I read from a listener's email yesterday, the truth sometimes really destroys one's belief system or the way that they were taught or know what they know. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It is something that
I agree.
People have a hard time accepting.
No, you know, I totally agree, and you're right. I should I should have probably really let that sink in to my head. But I'm just amazed at how many people want, given the diagnosis, for example, and using this as an analogy, given the diagnosis of maybe you've got a month to live. Now, this is not a statement about our current situation here in the United States. I don't know if we've got a month or a year. I don't know. But regardless of the time is short relative to where we've been and where we're going. And by the way, I'm not talking about the end of the world. Don't think I'm talking about the end of the world, because I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to get out of this. You see, people have a tendency to think it's an either-or thing. Like, for example, what happens if the dollar collapses? Well, that's the end of the world. I mean, essentially, it's the end of the world. No, that's not the end of the world.
No,
it's the end of America, the ideology.
Yeah, it's the end of the way of life we have come to enjoy.
Exactly. And I've got to tell you, the United States is a place on the map. America is an ideology. They're two separate things. America is not going to, or the United States is not going to cease to exist. It's just going to be fundamentally and drastically transformed. And you know, the biggest mistake I have are people who, the biggest problem I've got, the mistake people had made of thinking that Obama was going to be some sort of, or is some sort of impotent idiot. He's not. And I mean the word idiot by its very definition. Right. He's not.
And he's not a complete idiot, like people say, but he also looks better because of the thinking heads that are around him. And I'm not talking about the people that are appointed, that he has appointed to these positions and that he has around him on an for administrative purposes. I'm talking about the people behind the scenes, the real political powers,
exactly.
The Kissingers, the Brzezinskis, and all these other influences that are not and should not be involved in our politics, the David Rockefellers. But yet
Right.
they set policy up in their meetings, which people, the media, mainstream media, and most of the talk show hosts on radio and TV like to dismiss as complete conspiracy theory.
Okay,
but yet it's admitted, Council on Foreign Relations, Hillary Clinton, I have an audio I can upload for tonight, admits taking her orders from the Council on Foreign Relations. Timothy Geithner, where'd he go when he left as Treasury Secretary? Well, he joined the Council on Foreign Relations. And these people do set the policy.
Look, I'm not saying anything bad about Glenn Beck, I mean, at this point, but he had interviewed G. Edward Griffin about his book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. And, excuse me, when he was talking to Mr. Griffin, he said, we don't have to go into la-la land or woo-woo land or whatever he used. We don't have to talk about, essentially, what he was referring to, we don't have to talk about the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers. We don't have to talk about any of that.
This is Beck?
This is Glenn Beck, and you can find it on YouTube, okay? And I've got respect for the research that Glenn Beck has done. I'm not taking him to task on the research he's done, but I am taking him to task, and Mr. Beck or Joe, if you're listening, I know his researchers do tune in, and I want to just say hello, you're doing a great job. But if I can appeal to you, take it all of the way. Take the investigation to its bitter end and look, because you see, the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, when you drill down to the end, that's where we're at. These are the people, the seven, the half a dozen families, the seven sisters, if you will. These are the entities, the groups, the people who are actually running the system, running the show. And everyone wants, and my source said this, and God bless you, sir. I'm not going to name you, obviously, by name, but God bless you and thank you for your insight. Everyone talks about the cobwebs and complains about the spider webs and stuff. And people actually, please, God, please remove the spider webs. Please get the spider webs. Remove them. Take them away. That's the wrong prayer. The spider webs are the wrong target. Remove the spider. That's what we need to do. Let's not dance around the issue.
There's no time for half-truths and places people care not to go because they don't want to be considered to look like they're a certain type of person, which we will say a conspiracy theorist or the people who believe in the one world government. But at least Beck has come out and exposed the one world government to a certain degree in Agenda 21, but he won't go as far as is needed, as his audience deserves.
Right, and perhaps
it's for a personal agenda, either because he is afraid of the consequences or because he is not allowed to for whatever reason, or because he doesn't want to because of his image or some other reason. But there has to be a reason behind why he won't go into things when the proof is everywhere. If he's looking at and exposing what he's exposing, there's no way he can miss the things that he doesn't cover, because they're one and the same a lot of the times.
Exactly. Very much so. And again, from sources and what have you, a lot of these words are not mine, and it's just from the research I've done. We are past, at this point, it's the collective belief of the people I've spoken with that we're past the point of return. Once again, making the analogy with a cancer patient, we're past the chemo and the radiation. We're past any type of therapy or treatments. Our situation is indeed dire. There's really no cure. It's a terminal case. And we have to come to grips with that. But when we come to grips with that, that doesn't mean losing faith and saying, once again, the world is going to end. It means that there's going to be a transformation here. And we have to prepare for what lies ahead. because you see, we are called by God, I believe, and that the Scripture tells us, and that we must be the resistance, to the demonic oppression, or to the demonic, um, whether it's oppression or even the demonic um, possession. We have to fight, because we will have blessings once we reach the other side. We will have blessings, and that's and not doing that. When I say fight, it would, again, once again, it's like the cancer patient. Well, how do you fight when you have that? When you're given that diagnosis, it's a mental, it's a spiritual thing. But it's also a practical thing too, because you're going to do practical things for yourself, such as get your affairs in order. Now I'm talking about a cancer patient now, not the country, and not how to fight this, but get your affairs in order. Come to the realization that your life is going to change. You're not going to cease to exist after you pass to the other side. After after your earthly body dies, you're going to continue to exist, whether it's in heaven or hell. But see, you've got to, at this point, understand that a transformation is ahead. I like to use that better than passing, but anyway. So do things, whether it's not, even if it's not for yourself, if it's for your children. Because, okay, where we are right now, and I'll get to the nut of this, what I'm talking about. If you look at where we're at, we are one crisis away, one crisis in the Middle East away from a complete economic meltdown in this country. And
I'm sorry, did you say in the Middle East?
Yes,
we are one crisis away.
We are one crisis away in the Middle East from an economic meltdown here in the United States.
Okay.
Now, people have to understand too how the dollar and how the federal, and our audience is the most intelligent, well-researched audience, I believe, in the world. The Federal Reserve System, it's a central banking system. It's a giant Ponzi scheme. And see, right now, if you are involved in a Ponzi scheme and you begin to run out, or you get close to the end of that scheme, and you're the schemer, well, what are you going to do? You're going to have to do something. You're going to have to pick up and move to another location, or do something, because you're about to be exposed. You're about to be found out. That more people are going to look and say, wait a minute, I bought into a lie. There's a lot of, by the way, people involved in Ponzi schemes for real. They undergo a lot of pain and a lot of shame and a lot of hurt, but the Ponzi scheme works for one reason. It works because there's this element of greed inherent in people. Some people, not everybody, but they're. Unmute yourself. You talk about me. I love
I'm
you,
sorry. I've been doing it because of the sound.
Okay.
No, a lot of people are motivated by money, but the ones who have all the money are motivated by the power.
Right, exactly. But think of it this way, too. If you don't like, and if you're uncomfortable with the cancer analogy, which I understand, look at our country as just a beautiful Italian-made suit coat, for example. And now again, these are not my words, or this is not my analogy, but I like this. If there is a tear in the seam of the suit coat or of a dress, that's easily repairable, is it not? You can go take it to a seamstress and have it repaired. But what about the fraying? Let's say you're on your suit coat or on your dress, made with this beautiful Italian silk. Instead of a rip in the seam or a separation at the seam, what happens if there is a worn through patch on the fibers on the arm, perhaps? or the fabric is frayed in an area, and you can see it's almost becoming threadbare because of perhaps chafing. You see, the seam tear is easier to fix, but the frayed fabric is more of a problem. And what we're looking at with our country is not a tear in the seam; it's the frayed fabric, and it goes back to 100 plus years. Well, actually, ever since this country was initiated, there was a plan for this global one world order. You could take it back to Albert Pike if you choose to. You could take it back to, however far back you want to take it back to. And then think of Washington's visions of 3 wars. Joe, are you familiar with that? The last war being his vision of cities being in flames. Okay.
I have his book of diaries. I have the Washington Papers. It's the book of George Washington. I haven't read the whole thing, just selective parts, but no, I've never heard of that.
Well, and I had not either, except in kind of in passing. But the last war of America, according to the visions of George Washington, his when I say visions, I guess that's the best word for it, is America's cities being in flames, and that's pretty consistent with perhaps scripture, if you look at it in a broader sense and not apply it to the United States of America. But you look at this is how I believe it's going to play out based on the information I've been getting. It's going to be a situation where, because of the fact that we are one crisis away in the Middle East from a complete dollar crisis meltdown, a choke point for example, if the dollar is not backed, or since the dollar is not backed by anything, not in terms of gold or silver or anything tangible, except for oil. Think about oil being cut off. Well, of course, that's going to affect the rate of the dollar. The value of the dollar. The dollar is going to be worthless. People are going to be essentially crying and rioting in the streets. The cities are going to burn, which is consistent with George Washington's vision. And of course, from there, you can also apply the biblical scriptures. If you choose to believe perhaps that America is Babylon or the daughter of Babylon or whatever you believe, but look at the scriptures that seem to apply with what we're seeing today. But we are past the point of no return. Our situation is dire. There is no cure. We're essentially analogous to the cancer patient. We are terminal. Now, had we understood the symptoms earlier, perhaps we might have had a chance.
I have Washington's vision.
Okay, well, if you want to unmute your mic and read that, the city.
It's called The Third Peril: Foreign Nations Attack the USA. This is George Washington's vision. And again, I heard the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." At this, the dark, shadowy angel placed a trumpet to his mouth and blew 3 distinct blasts, and taking water from the ocean, he sprinkled it upon Europe, Asia, and Africa. And my eyes beheld a fearful scene. From each of these countries arose thick black clouds, as were soon joined into one. Throughout this mass there gleamed a dark red light, which I saw hordes of armed men who moved with the cloud, marched by land, and sailed by sea to America. Our country was enveloped in this volume of cloud, and I saw these vast armies devastate the whole country and burn up villages, towns, and cities that I beheld springing up. My ears listened to the thundering of the cannon, the clashing of the sword, and the shouts and cries and the millions in mortal combat. I heard again the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." And I'll post this article in the chat for you guys to read the rest, because there's a lot more.
Well, thank you very much for that. And his vision does call for the cities to be in flames. So right now, we have to get out of denial. Everyone has to get out of denial. Realize where we are in this path of crises.
A little backing up a sec. Do you know if these things from Washington's were dreams, were visions, were his own interpretations of things that could happen? Because,
Yeah, I understand where you're going with this. I believe that he believed that they were angelic or divine revelations to him.
I'm going
All
to do
right.
some research on this. So Monday I'll have a better explanation of
Okay.
the origins and how they came to be.
And perhaps, folks, you can use that as your homework assignment, so to speak. Look at the George Washington, what he had to say. But we're getting to that point, and the point that we're at right now, because in this Ponzi scheme, if you understand the Ponzi scheme, the economic Ponzi scheme, the attitude of the majority of Americans right now is, and I'll quote this: "I've got mine. Too bad for you." Okay, I've got my piece of the pie. I've got my investment. And when you're in a Ponzi scheme and you realize that you've kind of been had, and you've got like an investment, we'll say US dollars, the normal course of what people will do is try to unload that on someone else. Meaning, I've got, meaning that they've got to get rid of it, sell it, exchange the dollars, I should say, for something of value. And then they can say, well, you know what? Too bad for you. You got the dollars. And see, that's the inherent attitude for the majority of Americans. And think about how we have witnessed over the last several months and last 4 years this entitlement mentality. That's what has been bred, purposely bred into us.
And you mentioned Babylon.
Right.
This originated in Babylon, and this was something I tried to get you to pay attention to before the show, but you didn't have time, was the Nimrod.
Oh, yes.
Okay? Because this is, let me get the book here. Nimrod used food to gain favor of the people.
All right.
And he was tyrannical. It said that he was a tyrannical warrior who governed his lands with cruelty, rebellion, and rebellion against the Most High God. Nimrod and his offspring prodigies were insolvent, violent, and proudly independent of the Maker. He injected full-scale sexuality, idolatry into the mainstream human culture. Also, it goes on to say that right here, as a significant food supplier, he was a brilliant entrepreneur. The man quickly became the voice in the land and the authority over the villages. Anyone daring to resist him without the tremendous political clout with which he had conquered the territories he starved and destroyed. His tyrannical spirit would see to it that those who wanted to prosper with him and from his cunning would submit and commit to whatever he wanted. Poor people, after they had given all they had for food, would become slaves of the kingdom. But no, he used gifts and favors, such as food and other things, to gain and create a sense of dependency to gain the favor of the people.
Okay. Well, that does correspond, and I should have paid attention before.
And Nimrod was the king of Babylon. He used on the Tower of Babel, the one world government.
Okay.
But anyway, we'll hit on that another day.
But just a couple more things too. We're looking at, are we not seeing this right now? What we're seeing this rapid acceleration toward that cliff, and have we come to the realization? Have we really fully come to that realization that, look, we must get out of any state of denial that we're in. We must understand where we are and why we're here. And see, a lot of people will say, for example, I had a couple of emails saying, well, why did you choose to have Dr. Judy Wood on talk about 9/11, something that's over and done with. Well, because that does, just like Benghazi in Libya,
Yeah.
that shows, that should show people the that there's something wrong with the official story of
Right.
9/11.
It's the German Reichstag. It
Exactly.
is the Gulf of Tonkin. It is the excuse used to take away our rights that has changed our society and culture forever, that enabled the military-industrial complex to turn into this gigantic machine that has invaded countless of countries and killed millions of people since September 11th in the name of September 11th. That, in my opinion, was at the very least let to happen, if not helped orchestrated by criminal elements of our government.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't want to realize that, just as many people did not and could not at the time. I mean, we've been given, I believe, the gift of the internet to be able to pass information along that is true and is verifiable, authenticated. Look, the American people were fooled with the taking down, with the torpedoing of the Lusitania, which caused enough anger to get us involved in the First World War. That was one of the very big reasons, and that happened again with Pearl Harbor. Australia, their intelligence services had told Roosevelt that the Japanese were amassing a fleet heading directly for Pearl Harbor 4 days before the attack. And yet those ships sat there like targets that they were. And see, the same thing happened with 9/11. And the reason is, what does the monetary machine known as the Federal Reserve, these central banks, what do they feed on the most? They feed on a perpetual state of war. It does two things. It makes them a ton of money, the elite, but it also does something else. It allows things like the NDAA, the Patriot Act. It facilitates our erosion of liberties to the point where we become so conditioned that we are easily led to slaughter.
Now, we've referenced this before, but the report on Iron Mountain addresses the substitutes, the economic substitutes of war. Whatever value that report has as being authentic or not, they go into great detail on how to destroy and manipulate the economic system with other systems besides war.
Exactly. And
I've read those on air before.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. And people should have in their library the PDF.
I think I have it.
From the report on Iron Mountain, report from Iron Mountain. In fact, if I'm praying for the time to this weekend, for God to give me the time, or to be allowed the time to complete the website revision that I'm doing, that both Joe and I are doing, to get all of these documents, all of these important documents, on one place, so when we talk about these, we can just direct you to our website, and bam, you'll have them. Look, folks, I know you can get them on your own, but there are so many more documents that really tell the story of what's going on. And I just want to finish up with this really quick. Obama is going to be going to Israel, and Genesis 12. Chapter 2, verse 3. By the way, there are a lot of people out there who are angry at Israel and saying we should cut off all of our support of Israel. And Israel was responsible for 9/11. There's a lot of mistruths out there. You have to understand, I mean, there's this misunderstanding about Zionism versus the Jewish people. That's not the topic of the program today, but let's just take a really quick look at God's promise to bless those who bless Israel. I just want to say this too. You see, we talk about the news and current events and what's taking place today. And every day that goes on, every single day that I look at this with the Bible on one side of my desk and a gun on the other side of my desk. I'm speaking metaphorically now, with the exception of the Bible. It's there, but I mean, you can almost see
No,
it.
he's not.
And, but here's, it's and in the middle is a pile of newspapers and magazines and news reports. It's so difficult not to look at the news reports and look at the Bible. And I mean, it's right out of the Bible what
Yeah.
we're reading.
Yep. And I was listening to something on this today, how there is no other explanation. Okay, think about this. For the people who don't say God isn't real, the Bible is a myth. Well, how come everything that is happening in this life that we live in right now, and everything that has happened in history, not only was prophesied about in the Bible, it has all come to pass. There is no other excuse for the things that happen the way they're happening, as it says they would in the Bible, unless the Bible was true. Now, there's no books on evolution from the first monkey to walk the earth to turn human on how that happened, but there is a book given to us by the Creator explaining exactly what happened and how it happened. But still people don't want to understand because it interferes with maybe what they like to do, or how they like to act, or how they want to believe, leading back to man's will versus God's will. People don't want to be, they say, oh, religion is a system. The Zeitgeist movie uses this. Religion is a system to just a control mechanism of the masses. Well, to a certain extent, that's true. But
Karl Marx said that.
True Christianity is not anything like that. It frees you, okay? And no matter what denomination of religion you are in Christianity, the people who walk with Jesus, have a pure heart, are the true Christians, and they are the ones that are the Christianity. Now, for other religions, or people in other religions and denominations who hold on to that denomination more than they hold on to the Lord, that's a huge problem. But so to the extent that that movie demonizes all religion as a control mechanism, it is completely wrong. But yes, it is used as a control mechanism. Look at Islam. That's just one example. But even more so in Christianity. You see not the level of control where they control, what people wear and etc. But most of mainline Christianity through the denominations are conforming to society, therefore being controlled, and that leads to the control of the people now, because the church is saying it's okay for same-sex marriages to happen. What effect is that having on their congregations?
Huh. Well, you're correct, but this statement, religion is the opiate of the people or opiate of the masses, attributed to Karl Marx, it's something that people should understand, that it is an erroneous statement. It is meant to deceive. It is meant to take us away from doing what we do, and that's looking in one hand having the Bible, and in the other hand having the headlines. And look, I know Hal Lindsey does this, and he does it very, very well. But see, a lot of times Hal Lindsey and others talk above and beyond what people are ready to understand, or hold positions that it's just different. We just do it our way, and that's how we do it. Okay, but I don't know how I got off on that. But
I was gonna ask, are you having a hard time balancing the two?
No, there's just so much here, because
or figuring out what is important.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. I see
Okay.
what's important, but I just want to mention this too because I brought Israel into this and Obama's trip to Israel, and Israel. I've always looked at this as Israel is God's timepiece. What happens in Israel, specifically in Jerusalem and in the nation state of Israel, is in fact a measure of where we are in time. But just look at, once again, Genesis 12, 2, verse 2. Um, God delivered a promise to Israel that and to others that he has never repealed, and he's always fulfilled, basically stating that I will make you a great nation and I will bless you. I will make your name great and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all of the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Now that's never changed, and that's at
Right.
the beginning of the Bible. Okay, so just a quick jump through time here. This country that we live in, America, the ideology of America, has been greatly blessed as it blessed Israel, beginning with its founding in May of 1948. October of 1946, President Truman was a backer of the creation. In 1947, Truman instructed the State Department to support the UN plan um, for the creation of Israel, and reluctantly they did so. There was many questions and much rending of garments there, but Truman said, it's going to happen. And so at midnight on May 14th, 1948, the Provisional Government of Israel proclaimed a new state of Israel. That was at 6 o'clock Washington time. 11 minutes later, on the same day, the United States, in the very person of then President Truman, recognized the Provisional Jewish Government as the de facto authority of the new Jewish state. And Truman crossed out the Jewish state in his recognition document and inserted the state of Israel. That's significant. But has the United States been blessed for its critical role in Israel's rebirth financially? We have.
Well,
We've prospered.
go ahead. Finish.
Well,
that.
look, think about this. From 1948, 60 years hence, America grew by 1,400%. In 1948, gross domestic product of the United States was just over $1 trillion. 60 years later, it grew to over 14 trillion per year. In that same period, our country enjoyed the time of the greatest freedoms. Through
Okay.
whatever Americans have done with that, however, what Americans did with that freedom, that's a separate issue. But just one more thing: under Eisenhower and Kennedy and Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, the United States proved to be a reliable and generally trustworthy friend of Israel. The Nixon tapes, if you remember back in the Watergate time, um, they were a little bit dicey, but he was ultimately, admittedly dicey, but he was ultimately, in the end, a consistent friend of Israel. But in Genesis 15, God gave Israel the land. Okay, just remember that. But
Yeah. I want
go
to
ahead.
jump in here and ask you a question, and this might, I don't know if anybody can answer this. If we are blessed because of our prior help with Israel, could we be cursed for helping them with, or helping them promote corrupt government, or letting the governments run? Our governments are corrupt, obviously. Our government is corrupt. I don't know
Right.
about how far the Israeli government, their corruption is,
I'm sure.
but every government is full of corruption. What if we are promoting the corrupt side of that? Would that cause the opposite effect? Because we are not helping Israel by helping the corruption of that land.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think God has a way of sorting those things out.
I agree.
But if we just take just a quick walk, you look at Carter through his Camp David Accords, 1978, the forced peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. Look, it's you can see different things here that took place. March 26, 1979, Camp David Accords. Some said, "Well, boy, that was a fulfillment of end time prophecies." Do you like how I stuttered there? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but at any rate, it didn't appear. Nothing really appeared too strongly under Carter's 39th U.S. presidency. But as we go on, look at what George Herbert Walker Bush, a Republican, conservative Republican, under the 41st president of the United States, um, he decided that through via James Baker, his Secretary of State, at some point in 1991, that well, we should make peace in the Middle East by causing Israel to exchange some of its land, give up some of its land. It's God-given territory to its Muslim neighbors, and in return for that's in return for peace. And remember Secretary of State Baker making several trips to the Middle East between March and October of '91, working out the details of what the U.S. was proposing, a first ever peace conference with bilateral talks between Israel and its Palestinian neighbors. Well, in a way, this was kind of an extension of the Carter Doctrine, but we won't get into that. But the Madrid Conference of 1991, now the Bush-Baker initiated peace conference, that was known as the Madrid Conference. They convened on October 30th, 1991, lasted for 3 days. What President Bush announced in the Madrid Conference continues to affect what we're seeing today. You see, Bush told the delegations from Israel, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan that our objective must be clear and straightforward. It's not simply to end the state of war in the Middle East and replace it with a state of non-belligerency. That's not enough. Rather, we seek peace, real peace. And by real peace, I mean treaties. Israel now has an opportunity to demonstrate its willingness to enter into a new relationship with its Palestinian neighbors. Essentially, what he said was, look, you're going to have to give up land. There's going to have to be a territorial compromise for peace. End of story. There it was, openly stated by the world's only superpower at the time, that the world sees as Israel's main ally and primary protector, us, the United States, wanted Israel to give up its land. It's a territorial compromise in exchange for peace. Well, what's this have to do with today? Well, look at what's taking place. It's continuing today. Now Obama is over there. It's a continuity of agenda. It's a continuity. Obama's going to be going over there essentially doing the same thing. Look, give up the land for peace. It's the wrong perspective, and from God's perspective, there's definitely a level of displeasure here, because land for peace is not going to work. On the same day as that groundbreaking speech by President Bush, it was October 30th, 1991. There was another, a series of talks, October 30th, 1991. There was this enormous, unprecedented tropical low, a natural disaster or a natural perfect storm combined with a tropical cyclone, which then became a hurricane, then centered on the northeastern coast of the United States. That storm was so massive in scope and so unusual in its components that it was quickly labeled the perfect storm. Remember that, folks? October of 91. It was designated by the National Weather Service as once in a century storm. Joe, you might even remember this. But it was a rare combination of weather factors that led to waves 10 stories high, winds at 120 miles an hour. A book about the perfect storm was made into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that every time we mess with God's words, and bad things happen. The New York Times reported, and think about this. President Bush's home and vacation compound was damaged by the North Atlantic storm. What waves as high as a three-story house filled his house with seawater and caused extensive damage. That was reported on May 1st or November 1st, 1991. 3-story waves. And isn't it something that Bush had said, give up your houses, men of Israel, women of Israel, families of Israel, give up your houses. And houses were destroyed, actually physically destroyed. And look what happened. Well, I can go on and on and on. Look at what happened with through Clinton. I mean, there's so many accounts under President Clinton's direction. The United States continued to push Israel to arrive at a land for peace agreement, and a secret series of negotiations. People don't realize this. It took place in Norway from April '93 to I think it was August of '93. Now, as a result of these negotiations, we pressured Israel into an agreement. We pressured them, land for peace, land for peace. These are the Oslo Accords. They were officially signed. They were officially signed on September 13th, '93, on the White House lawn. Remember Clinton presiding and drawing Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat together in a historic handshake, the Oslo Accords. They led to the creation of the Palestinian Authority, which was given control over this specified territory. Well, why is this so important? Well, we pressured Israel into that agreement, land for peace. Now, what happened? 1993, Midwest flood was one of the most significant and damaging natural disasters ever to hit the United States. 15 billion, 50 people died, hundreds of levees failed, and so on. And from May through September of 1993, major and/or record flooding occurred across North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, all over the place. Well, do you think that was a message? Was it a natural disaster? But who else but God can change the weather pattern so that it rains virtually every day for a week, and then another week, and then week after week, and totaling 38 inches in some areas? It just happened, by the way, to fall for a time period starting right after the Oslo Accord negotiations were called to order until the end of the negotiations. until the signing of the paper. Once that paper was signed, the rain stopped. And many other things happened in the Clinton administration. And in the administration of George W. Bush, we mentioned this before, the Hurricane Katrina, the settlements that were involved in the Gush Katif arrangement, the same measure of land that Israel was forced to give up was the same measure of land destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. And so why do I mention all this? Why do I mention all this? The reason being, what do you think Obama is going to do and has been doing as an antagonist to Israel? Do you think that there are going to be any ramifications in this country when Obama goes in March to Israel? Do you think that God is going to take this with any degree of humor? I think not. And it goes back to our economy. Hey, if we didn't listen with massive storms, and if we didn't listen with natural disasters, if we didn't listen, then are we going to listen now? I just wonder. I don't know. But I'll tell you what. The real crisis is at hand. And by the way, one more thing, and this is off of Israel, but think about this too: the domestic problem at home. Folks, you've heard about the guns and ammunition. You've heard about the guns and ammunition being bought up by the Department of Homeland Security. Have you stopped to think for a moment that the way to gun control is to control the ammunition, is to buy up so much ammunition that we don't have any? Because see, what they're expecting, according to the source I have, and we'll get more into this when we get into the news after the top of the hour. And Joe's got a ton of news. Joe did a great job in identifying what's really important. But think about this. Why all the ammunition? Is it to put 5 bullets in the head or body of every man, woman, and child in America? Well, perhaps it is. But have you thought that perhaps it's more to keep the ammunition out of our hands? a way to keep the ammunition out of our hands. It's a way to take it out of circulation. The brass, the primers, that's the real issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to stop being in denial.
Yeah. And we're going to go to the break, but a few stories that we are going to hit tonight. There are problems in the Eurozone economy. Italy is behind the rise in Eurozone jobless record. This is a claim made by the AP. Italy jobless rates jumped to a record high of 11.7% in January. Also, Department of Homeland Security is being sued by a civil rights group over the internet kill switch. Also, out of Greece, a promise from the army has been obtained to not intervene against a civil uprising. We're going to get into that. Also, I am not a dictator. There was some gun legislation that was passed today, and some other legislation that we need to get to, both good and bad. And with that, we're going to go to break. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this first day of March 2013. And time flies. It is already March. Unbelievable. But we'll be right back with more headlines and your calls coming up. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Stay with us.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have a long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
The government is making a record number of requests now for the private information of you from Google. That's according to data released by the search engine giant. What's more startling is that over half of these requests are made without warrants. So is it constitutional? Who better to ask than Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Good morning to you, Judge.
Good morning, Gretchen.
All right, so lay out for us what the law is right now. What can the government do?
Well, under the Constitution, the government can't get any information from about you from anybody, from a telephone server to a provider to a computer server to your bedroom drawer without a search warrant. Search warrant is issued by a judge based upon sworn evidence of probable cause of crime. That's what the Constitution says. It covers everything. But gradually over the years, the government has worn away at that constitutional protection. In 1986, in the Reagan administration, the government enacted the Electronic Privacy Act, which basically said federal agents can write their own search warrants, bypass judges, and get information about you from banks. In 2001, the government did it again with the Patriot Act. So where does it stand today with emails, which is what Google reported yesterday? About a month ago, the Senate voted to prohibit the government from getting people's emails without a search warrant. The legislation died in the House. So the law as it now stands is federal agents can write their own search warrants to get your emails. Get your emails means emails stored not in your personal computer, but in the server's computer, and not the body of the email, but the identity of the sender and the receiver.
I see.
If the government wants the wording of the email itself, it has to go to a judge and get a warrant. Why am I aggravated about this? Why should everybody be aggravated about this? Well, people should be aggravated about this because these are private communications which are protected by the Fourth Amendment. But the government has given itself. We didn't give to the government gave to itself the power to get this information about us. It always does it under a benign purpose. It always says we're doing it to keep you safe. But in reality, it is invading our privacy. And it's privacy that we have come to expect that we have.
Let's see what Google had to say about this. Before complying with a government request, we make sure it follows the law and Google's policies. We notify users about legal demands when appropriate, unless prohibited by law or court order. And if we believe a request is overly broad, we seek to narrow it, like when we persuaded a court to drastically limit a U.S. government request for 2 months of user search queries.
If Google does that, my hat is off to them, because if Google were to say to the Carlson or Napolitano household, the federal government has asked us to identify and isolate emails that you sent or you received, we want to tell you about that. You then have an opportunity to go to a federal judge and say, what's going on here? Where are my Fourth Amendment rights? But when the Google doesn't tell you that, like the federal government says,
you
don't tell the Carlson household, then you don't know what the government has about you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Judge. You explained it brilliantly for this hour of the morning.
Pleasure, Gretchen.
Oh,
Elizabeth.
It's great to see you.
Where's Kilmeade? Is he awake?
Now,
hold on to your seat. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Friday, March 1st, 2013. We are going to be taking calls in the third hour. I just confirmed that with my father, as we have a lot of news to get into in this next hour that is important. We all know what is going on with the sequestration. Today, Mayor Bloomberg weighed in saying, don't panic about the sequestration. At midnight tonight, bevy of steep spending cuts will hit the federal government unless Congress and the White House agree to an alternative deficit cutting proposal. Now, I was listening to Glenn Beck for a couple of seconds when I was running some errands today, and they were making jokes. What do you say? Oh, the cell phone towers are collapsing. No police are responding to 911 calls, and kind of mocking the urgency that the government has put on. Basically, with Janet Napolitano saying, terrorist attacks could be more likely to happen if this happens, and think the sky's going to fall. There's not going to be people to do air traffic control, but this is what we went through this earlier this week. The Republicans wanting to cede power over to Obama on this issue. Now, okay, Obama sequestered math, $300 billion in new revenues called spending cuts. When President Obama put out his balanced plan to avoid the automatic sequester cuts, no one noticed, which is probably just as well for Obama, given how embarrassingly unbalanced it is. Last week, the New York Times wrote about how Obama hasn't actually come up with a proposal to avert sequestration, let alone one that is politically plausible. Turns out Obama did have one, although Brooks can be excused for not knowing it. That was the author of the article, since the administration hasn't exactly been promoting the so-called plan. That, too, is understandable, since it isn't a plan at all. It's just a list of numbers with a little to back them up. There are little details, for example, about the $200 billion in cuts to defense and domestic discretionary programs, other than that Obama wants them split evenly. And while he offers $400 billion in health savings, 30% are lumped into a bucket labeled other. Worse, Obama's balanced plan actually counts hundreds of billions of new revenue from taxes, fees, and rebates as spending reductions. Example, his plan to strengthen unemployment insurance is labeled as a cut, but it's really a $50 billion tax hike. The $35 billion from the Federal Worker Retirement Program involves boosting worker contributions, but most of the $35 billion in Medicare savings comes from charging wealthy seniors more. $140 billion in reduced payments to drug companies are in fact rebates. Obama wants drug makers to pay Uncle Sam for selling drugs to poor seniors. As a result, instead of and there's a couple more on here I'm not going to go through. As a result, instead of a $1.2 trillion in spending cuts called for by the sequester over the next decade, Obama would add more than $1 trillion in revenues, while cutting outlays only about $600 billion. And most of those aren't really cuts, but tiny reductions in projected spending growth over the next decade. In the end, the plan will do nothing to forestall the nation's oncoming debt crisis.
I just want to say this, Joe, and ladies and gentlemen, what you are witnessing is just political theater. That's all it is. It's the backroom deals have already been made. This is for public consumption. For example, the DHS released more than 2,000 illegal aliens. Okay, this was planned out. This was a dramatic. This is the show. Yes,
I thought. Let me check. I have an article here. This is from yesterday, ABC News.
Right.
Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano had no part in the decision to release low-risk illegal immigrant detainees. Also, there was another article saying that ICE. I have it right here. White House and the Department of Homeland Security were unaware of ICE's decision to release detainees until the agency announced it, administration officials say. This, I think, was from Politico.
Okay.
So, but no, you're onto something, because today there was an article about Department of Homeland Security being involved in what you just said, in cutting.
But this is about conditioning, because, for example, even the conservative, small c, Washington Times, their headline, DHS released more than 2,000 immigrants. Now, folks, understand this, though. Now, see, here's where the scales have to be taken from people's eyes. The only illegal, first of all, the word immigrants is an incorrect statement. They're here illegally, so they're illegal aliens. But the only ones that are being held for deportation are the ones who have committed some sort of serious crime. So they're releasing criminals with no other means of support than committing more crimes. So, in other words, and by the way, they're planning on release. And I don't know if you've heard this, but they're planning on releasing another 3,000 during March. So, in like a lion and out like a lion, March. So,
well, yeah, this headline. This is a new headline from today. AP exclusive. Department of Homeland Security released over 2,000 immigrants. And they weren't immigrants; they were illegal aliens.
Correct.
But what's with the blaming ICE on the 27th of February the 27th or the 28th in Politico?
Right.
Yet now they're saying the Department of Homeland Security released from its jails more than 2,000.
Well, I'm sorry. What's the question? It's ICE is under the umbrella of DHS.
Okay, but they made a distinction that the White House and the Department of Homeland Security.
Yes.
Right here. The White House and the Department of Homeland Security were unaware of ICE's decision to release detainees.
No,
but even though they're under the umbrella, wouldn't the headline read, ICE released over 2,000?
Well, okay. No, no, no. I see where you're headed with this. No, it was, look, this is a move to get the attention of the American people away from what's going on, it's actually a multifaceted
Yeah.
move here.
Yeah, Agenda 1, they're blaming on the sequestration. They're saying that they
Correct.
need more money for other things because of the sequestration. They had to release them.
Right, and they're doing this. This regime is doing this. Americans are out drinking. They're going to movies. They're going to buy big TVs at the mall. They're buying cars. They've got their heads in the sand, and so this is a way to make the situation seem so dire and blame everyone else and kick the can down the road and saying, "See, look what's happening because of irresponsibility." And they're playing on the factions, on this fictitious faction of the government, when it's the agenda of both the Republicans and Democrats. Even forget that. It's the objective of the current government with the executive regime, the executive branch under the regime of Obama heading this up and saying, okay, how can we make the situation seem so dire, so Armageddon-like, apocalyptic? Well, okay, one big thing we can do is we'll take 2,000 illegal aliens and throw them onto the streets. It wasn't a unilateral decision by ICE. Can you imagine? And I've seen websites, very popular websites with well-known people say, well, it's the head of ICE, that he should be flogged and he's a bad person, without regard to understanding that this is all a dog and pony show. So don't think that this was a unilateral decision. This was a decision that was made. And by the way, while we are being distracted with all this news of sequestration, what are we not seeing? That this fog being used by the magic in DC, what's all this covering? Well, this is covering what we talked about earlier, the Ponzi scheme that exists to our detriment.
Yep. And just to give you a glimpse of what is coming to America, or what is already here but really covered up well, are the jobless numbers, the unemployment rate. Italy is seeing a jobless rate at a record high of 11.7%. And in 2012, in January, it was 9.6. Now we have the 17 countries, their employment rates from last year and this year. The European Union, the 27 countries in general, went from a 10.1 to a 10.8. We have the biggest jumps. We have Cyprus, 9.9 to 14.7. In Greece, let's see, what's Greece? They say right now it is, or in 2012 it was 20%, 20.8%, but they don't have numbers for now. Portugal, 14.7% in 2012 of January. Today, 17.6. Even Spain, 23%, 23.6% last year, up to 26.2% in January of this year.
So what does this all mean?
Well, it means that the number of unemployed in Europe has risen in overall of the 27 countries, but in Italy, in Greece, in Portugal, in Spain, in the problem areas we're seeing, it has risen very steeply. And it goes on. This is the highest unemployment level in Italy in 21 years, 11.7%. And what is France? They have their socialist president. Okay, and I have something on here.
Now would be the time to have Constance, our French correspondent, call in with the report there. But see,
yeah, where's France? But go ahead.
No, but just to kind of walk back just a couple of steps, because your neighbor might be telling you, for example, things are looking very good because look at the Dow. Look at the Dow. Everything is fine. Everything is good. But see,
Mm.
the devil, and I mean this perhaps literally, the devil is in the details with respect to the Dow. The Dow Jones Industrial Average will be the first U.S. equity benchmark to breach new highs. We're looking at this in such a skewed fashion. For example, you see, the Dow number has been weighted with through an arbitrary process. What you're seeing, the numbers of the Dow today are different than the numbers the components of the Dow today are different than the components of the Dow 5 and 10 years ago. And people have to understand, just like the numbers, Joe, that you read with Greece and other places.
Yeah, you have those numbers too.
Those numbers, look, and thank you for printing this out, Joe. The unemployment numbers across the 17 European countries.
Yeah.
Okay, they've hit a new record of 11.9% for January, but that's not the true story. That's what we're being told it is. Go to Greece. Greece is showing 20.8. That number is got to be 10, 12 months old, because right now in Greece you've got people
Yes.
dying of hunger.
Listen to this. I got a headline out of Greece it's very shocking, surreal. Greece, a promise from the army has been obtained not to intervene against a civil uprising. It's always enlightening to hear the frank assessment of a diplomat upon leaving service, once unshackled from the patriotic art of lying for one's country, as 19th century American journalist Ambrose Bryce described the craft. Leonidas Kastapoulos, a career diplomat with the Greek Foreign Ministry, as a junior officer, he served in the 1970s to help assure then freshly democratic nations accession to the European Union. Last year, he finally resigned as the Secretary General of the Black Sea Cooperation Organization and entered the private sector. Now feels free to speak openly about his fury at what he says Europe and the international lenders, aka the IMF, aka the international bankers to the Federal Reserve, are doing to his country. At a certain moment, quite soon, there will be an explosion of social unrest. It will be very unpleasant, he says, referring to the 15 armed incidents in the previous 10 days. In the past few weeks, offices of the government parties have been firebombed, as well as homes of pro-government journalists. Headquarters of the Prime Minister's conservative New Democratic Party was machine-gunned, and days later, a bomb exploded at a shopping mall belonging to this country's second wealthiest citizen, although no one has been badly injured in the attacks. Now, why haven't we heard this on our news? But
well, we're watching the wrong channels. I'm watching TV Land and not one special alert.
And I'm continuing his statements here. It's an escalation of activities, he worries, adding he expects an explosion to occur sooner rather than later. He predicts the spark will be when new retroactive and sizable tax bills come due in the coming months that the people simply cannot pay. There will be a further increase in armed action. There will be bloody demonstration. These actions are condemnable, of course, but I feel that this sort of armed activity will increase as long as the government continues to impose oppressive measures against the Greek people. Now, you can substitute Greek for American because this is what's happening here.
Well, let's bring it home, folks. Let's bring it to the domestic side right now. Consider a couple of these. Consider one or more of these. Right now, 24%, or I'm going to say 25%, that's 1 out of every 4 Americans has more unsecured debt, credit card debt, than money in the bank. That's never happened before in recent history.
I don't have either. So no credit cards and no money. So I'm all right.
And you know what? There's a certain, folks, I know you're like us out there. There's a certain freedom with that, isn't there? No, in fact, I purchased something at the store, and they said, "You want to apply for a credit card?" And I just laughed. I'm thinking, yeah, that'll work. No, it won't. But anyway, J.C. Penney, for example, people look at retail, these anchor retail establishments, as kind of a barometer of things. They, for the first time in more than 30 years, they lost $4.5 billion in sales in the first year of their CEO Ron Johnson's turnaround plan. See, Johnson was brought into the penny conglomerate to because they thought, well, hey, we can change things through a change of policy and, spit and polish on the racks. Well, no, it's deeper than that. So for the first time in more than 3 decades, Penny's lost $4.5 billion in sales. Their shares, by the way, fell 18%. After declining 22%.
Am I wrong? Did the Dow hit a new high today?
Yes, and see, the Dow hit a new high, and people are saying, "Oh, this is great," but they're not understanding that this is an artificial high. I mean, this is a manipulated high of the Dow. This is all computer trading. This is all stuff.
What do you mean? You mean some of these companies aren't worth the, billions of dollars that they say they are, that the stock market is being manipulated, or that the currency is being manipulated, or both? I say both, because we have heard from people on here, such as, who was it that was telling us, I think it was the Insider V that was telling us that Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan have computer programs that real-time monitor stock activities and can go and at one time saying to their people, don't buy this stock, or they're buying all of it up, or vice versa. And they have these algorithms that know how to play. Basically, it's like cheating in a casino.
And people have to understand exactly. When we opened the show, and I was talking about the pyramid, the Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid scheme, Ponzi scheme. You see, this is reflective of it. In other words, this can't last. People are enjoying this now, and they're fooling, or they're attempting to fool you.
George Soros, I'm having a great crisis.
Yes.
That's what he said.
And you want to know who the architects are? Yes.
Are buying the most gold now than ever before in history.
That's right. And what's in the vaults of Fort Knox and of the Federal Reserve? Is there gold there? Well, why? Yeah, and you've got to ask yourself why no one will allow an audit, and because you don't have anything or you don't have what people say is in Fort Knox and the Federal Reserve. Don't forget, and this is so important. Folks, remember August 15th of 1971. Why is that date so important? That was a Sunday, and then President Nixon, who came into office hating the Keynesian or Keynesian economics. He was an Austrian economics person. But because he had an office, by the way, I shouldn't. Well, he did come into office hating it, but he was also conditioned because he had an office down the hall from J.D. Rockefeller, I believe, prior to his presidency. But listen to this: August 15th, 1971, because France was demanding gold in exchange for dollars, he got on the television and said, "Look, we are changing things. We're taking the dollar off the gold standard." But why did he do that? He did it because we were out of gold. But he made it sound like he was protecting the currency against speculators, just as today we're seeing the same thing. Different people, a little bit different situation, but the same thing, the same template. And you know what people complained about the most on that August 15th, on that warm August night? People complained that Bonanza, their show, or Ponderosa, whichever one it was interrupted rather than seeing the announcement for what it was. Folks, what Joe opened with what's going on in Europe and the Eurozone, it's happening here, and it's not only happening, but it's getting quicker and faster and faster. Please, ladies and gentlemen, please, please just do me one favor this weekend. If you're planning a shopping trip at the grocery store, go ahead and cut the coupons out of the paper to save yourself. Please do that, but also please buy an extra can of peanut butter or jar of peanut butter.
Yeah,
just do it.
Something I had to help my wife learn, which was one of her weak points, and I have many weak points that she's strong on, but the difference between wants and needs.
There you go, yes.
Yeah, that can do a lot for a person when trying to save money. I'm going to run through some headlines real quick because I got a lot I want to hit.
Go ahead.
The sequester again. TSA, they say the hiring freeze could double checkpoint waits. The TSA announced Friday it would adopt the hiring freeze and reduce overtime spending in response to the federal spending cuts, a move it said could double wait times at checkpoints at the busiest airports. Now, I find it interesting that the sequester is all about federal spending. None of it is about state and local. It's not going to affect our local police forces. It's not going to affect our local, they say hundreds of teachers, thousands of teachers will be out of work. Hundreds of people who work in, police and EMS will be not be able to respond. That's what Obama said the other day. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting that the TSA and people are gonna have to wait longer. Maybe that's what it will take to get them mad. Two gun pieces of news here.
Oh, we got
Court of Appeals. This. I'll give you the good news first. Court of Appeals out of Illinois must allow concealed carry of a firearm, they ruled. Okay. Vice President Biden and left-wing members of Congress continue to press for restrictive gun control legislation. The judges of the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals are demanding that the state of Illinois adopt legislation by June that will allow for legal concealed carry of a firearm, or else.
Or else?
Or else.
Okay.
It goes on to say that it talks about Chicago-style politics and the Democrats in the House of Chicago being on pushing gun control measures. But it goes on to say here, for example, House Majority Leader Michael Madigan, a Democrat from Chicago, imposed a piecemeal process on the legislature, requiring representatives to consider dozens of appeals one at a time to construct a bill that would contain both new gun control measures and presumably legal means for implementing concealed carry. Even the Chicago Tribune described this process as unusual and observed that the Republican legislators recognize Madigan's move is a stunt. As reported by the New American in mid-December of 2011, the decision by the Court of Appeals virtually guaranteed that at least in some measure, Illinois will come into line with the rest of the United States and will legally recognize a right to conceal carry of a firearm. So, but yeah, the Supreme Court, Madigan does have 90 days to decide whether or not to appeal to the Supreme Court, which allows time for her father to see how far the legislature is prepared to go in conforming to the court's ruling. The process involved in shaping and adopting House Bill 1155 is sufficiently sufficiently complicated that even after decisive vote in favor of an amendment adopting a concealed carry, it is still uncertain whether or not Illinois' House has approved the concealed carry measure. In an assessment of the Associated Press, the 67-48 vote in favor of the amendment doesn't mean concealed carry got House approval. But they are going to have to go ahead with this order. It was a 5-4 decision on February 22nd. The 10-member Court of Appeals upheld the December 11th decision, which was a 3-member panel. The Attorney General now faces a decision whether or not to risk an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, a move that could bring a decisive defeat to opponents of the right to keep and bear arms. But that is a piece of good news. The Court of Illinois is saying that they must allow for a legal concealed carry permit, even though you already have the right to do that and obtain that, but apparently not in Illinois. This piece is not good news. Maryland Senate passes Governor O'Malley's gun control bill. 10 hours of intense debate. The Senate passed Governor O'Malley's gun control measure handily late Thursday afternoon, 28-19, with all 12 Republicans and a handful of Democrats voting against the bill. The measure will be debated in the House next week, and the passage nearly certain. After O'Malley signs the bill into law, it will make Maryland's gun laws among the most restrictive in the nation, putting the lie to the state's moniker, the Free State. Now, we've seen New York come out and be the first state with the strictest new gun laws. Then California came out and went over top of New York as the strictest gun law state. Now we have Maryland. Maryland is also the nation's wealthiest state. Its citizens currently have registered more than 1,200,000 of their firearms with the state under a previous law. The new legislation will require gun owners as well as new purchasers of firearms to get fingerprinted, take 8 hours of classroom study, and pay for a more extensive background check. In addition, no one will be able to buy a so-called assault weapon or purchase a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. The bill also tightens up limits on gun ownership by residents committed against their will for mental treatment. And it goes on from there. I'll post the link to this in the chat room. And then the worst...
Well, wait, just let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly can't tell you to break the law. I certainly would not advocate breaking the law, but I'll tell you one thing I would...
Your life, you know?
I'll just say this. I will never submit to any type of registration, gun registration. I would never submit to any type of confiscatory type of gun issue. This is just me now. I would much rather be a felon than a subject, and I say that with full knowledge of everything that implies. Because at that point, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to make a decision. If you're listening to us in New York, and I know I want to say hello to Barb in New York. God bless you, Barb. I know you're listening. I want to say hello to Ron in Maryland. I know you're listening. And Jeff in Maryland. Look, you're going to have to make a decision whether you are going to be on the right side of history and the wrong side of the law right now. But you're also going to have to make a decision about the protection of your family and your children and your children's children. Are you going to submit? Yeah. If it were me, I wouldn't. Because
we pick and choose our battles.
We do. But we must. We must
have a duty, as the Bible states, to survive.
Yes.
To endure.
And with that survival, and that's what I was alluding to before, with that survival to make it to the end. See, because the Antichrist system that's being implemented right now, as we fight these battles, and as we engage the enemy, or the enemy more appropriately engages us, winning and getting through to the other side, every victory as Christians provides us with blessings, with more blessings. And it's our duty, our moral obligation, really, to survive and to get to the other side so we can have bestowed upon us God's blessings. That's part and parcel to this.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind too.
Yeah. This I sent you on your Skype.
I have.
Turner School lockdown drill scares students. And then I'm going to go to the Connecticut bill. Turner School lockdown drill scares students. Turner, Oregon. Some parents and students in the small town near Salem were upset after a lockdown drill sent kids running in the classrooms in terror Wednesday. I was on the playground, and I see everyone screaming and running into their classroom, says fifth grader Carta Bosara. I turn around, and there is a guy climbing over the fence with a stick. Carter said the man was dressed in a hoodie. I thought someone was going to kidnap or kill us. Carter said, I was scared, and I thought there was a lot of people crying. The kids raced inside their classrooms. Carter said the man then started banging on the windows. According to principal of Turner Elementary School, it was all part of a surprise lockdown drill. He admits things went too far when a student teacher acted as an intruder, got too aggressive. Carter's mom sees the need for drills, but drills done sensibly. So it goes on to say, be prepared for the unexpected if necessary, she said. The principal sent a letter home to parents after the drill. He said the school was debriefed about the drill and hopes everyone learns something. Yeah.
Well, now think about this.
And I know this is a minimal case of kids being scared with a guy with a stick banging on windows, but
go ahead.
The conditioning factor,
That's right.
What do we see at Sandy Hook? What do we know about Sandy Hook? A lot of kids talked about the banging, the sounds of the banging.
Yes.
They were, already in their classrooms, but there was drills going on in the same area before that, mass shooting drills. Also, Sandy Hook, the police department there, did a similar drill before Sandy Hook. We saw stories like this after Sandy Hook, where these SWAT teams would be coming in firing blanks in schools without without the teachers or the students knowing that they were doing this.
That's right.
Not knowing if you're in a real gun battle or not. Not knowing if the bullets or shots you're hearing are an actual threat to your life, or if they're a SWAT team playing a surprise.
Well, I just want to say this. I'm just going to identify this person by his first initial, T. T, I received your correspondence about Sandy Hook. And folks, by the way, there are so many. There is an organization. It's a private investigative organization that has done an absolutely incredible job identifying various things with Sandy Hook. I'm talking about looking at video of individuals and identifying individuals down to their last freckle. Okay, T, I received your document. I will be in contact with you, but folks understand Sandy Hook there's so many things wrong with that.
Yeah.
And to talk about it is you can't talk about it. You can't even have an honest discussion about Sandy Hook without somebody calling you a Fruit Loop and a nutcase.
The judge sealed the death records, or
Right.
they sealed the records of death notifications. They sealed other information under the reasoning of it could provide additional information to a possible second suspect. There's been a lot of stuff that's going on with Sandy Hook that we haven't got to, but
in that same vein, though, you mentioned about the drill. Look, there was in Ambridge, right down the road from us, Ambridge, a student's outgoing voicemail message quoting, or actually that had the theme to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I don't know. You're familiar with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with Will Smith?
Yeah.
Remember back in the 80s or whatever it was? Well,
It's
that
one
was
of my favorite TV shows.
Okay. Well, it was a ringtone on this young student's voicemail at the, let's see here, it was it led to a lockdown in Ambridge, Pennsylvania. This is just kind of a suburb of quite a few miles from Pittsburgh. The Times Online in Beaver, Pennsylvania, said that a receptionist from a doctor's office called to remind the student Travis Clausen about an upcoming doctor's appointment. Travis Clausen didn't pick up the phone, so the call went to voicemail. The receptionist heard what sounded like a threat about a shooting in a school on the outgoing message. Well, apparently the message was intended to quote a lyric from Will Smith's sitcom theme song that goes, "And all shooting some b-ball outside of the school." It's unclear, of course, if the receptionist misheard Clausen's message or if the student altered the lyrics. Of course, this newspaper couched that story. But, folks, we are being conditioned. Understand this. This is a form of brainwashing, of mental conditioning. And we are being led down this rosy garden path of saying it's all for the children, it's all for their protection. It's not. It is a deliberate Now some of these, people, couldn't find their butt with both hands, and pardon that crudeness there, but seriously, some of these people are so hypersensitive, they hear the word gun or they hear the word shooting, whether it could be a photography reference, and they lock everything down and call the police, saying it's out of an abundance of caution, when it's out of an abundance of stupidity, or more nefariously, a way to condition the masses. But that just happened in Ambridge today, just south of Pittsburgh. Go figure.
All right. This might be the most disturbing news of the evening. Proposed Connecticut bill mandates mental health assessments for homeschooled children.
And
Here's
here
a link in the chat for you guys. This out of Federal Jack. Heather Clark, a homeschooling organization, or a national homeschooling organization, is sounding the alarm against a bill proposed in the Connecticut legislature which would require both public and homeschooled children to undergo a behavioral health assessment at various stages of child development. Bill 374, proposed in General Assembly by sponsors Senator Tony Harp and Representative Tony Walker, is likely in response to the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre, which took the lives of 20 children and 6 adults in past December. Some believe the incident could have been better prevented should there have been sufficient mental health assistance for gunman Lanza, and therefore the women are seeking to ensure that today's youth are screened throughout their adolescence for any concerning behavioral problems. Harp, who serves as the chairman of the Connecticut Mental Health Task Force, recently told reporters that while she does not want children to be stigmatized over the matter, she feels that lawmakers need to see how to better care for the mental well-being of the youth in order to prevent another tragedy.
Well,
the concern we have,
Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Well, we'll think about this in the context of the communist to New World, One World governance goals. Communist goal number 17 is to get control of our schools, our school students,
They already have that.
But also focus on those who decide to shun away from the school system. Don't forget the Department of Education was created just for this purpose, but those circumventing the DEA, that curriculum taught, are now the new targets for the communist propaganda of softening their curriculum. And by the way, it's get control of teachers' associations, put the party line in textbooks. But see, the Americans, as many have, are so resilient and so crafty, they began to homeschool their children. Well, this angered, and the communists who are going for that New World Order said, "Wait a minute, we got to do something about this." In the 1950s, in most parts of the United States, you've got to remember that this goal was unthinkable. In other words, getting control of the schools and using the schools as transmission. I'm talking about the elementary and secondary schools, using them as transmission belts for socialism and the current communist/New World Order propaganda. That was unthinkable back in the 50s. Children walked to school as it was a small decentralized school in the neighborhood. The school teachers were your neighbors. The local school board members were also your neighbors. And everyone was working toward the same goal: giving your children the best education possible. Now, how much has changed? Now many of the children are carted in buses all over town due to this desegregation process. The schools are larger, they're centralized, the school board has control and has been replaced by the school board. The school board control has been replaced by the federal government control. The teachers are now mostly faithful to their communist, socialist, progressive, New World Order, National Education Association Union, the NEA Union, not to the kids, not to the parents. This is forcefully exposed in the award-winning documentary, if you haven't seen it, Waiting for Superman. The socialist and Marxist propaganda is so prevalent in textbooks. That entire books have been written exposing that fact. And some textbooks coming out here recently, they're so distorted that even the very liberal group, the People for the American Way, came out protesting the fact that one set of new American history textbooks were just so off base when they discussed America's founding without ever mentioning the role religion had played in early America. And to think that's just, it's incredible to think how far we've gone. And we can go into the different rankings, but what you said, see, this is to this. What do you believe the goal is of that? Of that? What you read about the psychiatric or the mental health evaluations? What do you think the goal is for that? What's the ultimate goal here?
To have a better understanding of every child, the way they think, if they think independently of what they're told to think. I think that would, as we have seen in the West Point documents, as we've seen in the American Psychiatric Administration's documents, the DSM-5.
The DSM-5, I agree with you on that. But let me just take it one step further and put a kind of a twist on it.
The one parent says the assessment would constitute an unwarranted gross invasion of family privacy.
There you go. See, the progressive one world order people that are forcing this down our throats have gotten complete control of our public schools by putting the federal government, radical people in charge. So they want, what they're saying is, you've got to have the kids go through this system, our system. It's the NEA. You've got to have them go there because not for the education, but for the indoctrination. We can't, not for 1 second, allow your children to have that freedom of thought outside of the NEA's and outside of the Department of Education's purview. And see, if you are going to choose to do that, we're going to make it so cumbersome for you, so intimidating for you, that you're going to acquiesce and say, oh, well, okay, we'll put him through this, we'll put him through the school system. Everything. And I've got to say this, out of all the communist goals, this one really hurts me the most. I mean, really affects me the most, because when people say it's for the children,
they don't care about the children. We know that. We don't have to go over that. They sacrifice children.
I know, but think about that. Think about what's going on. Oh, I mean, wow.
Yeah, if you live in Chicago, cigarettes tax are going up $1 a pack, bringing the price of a pack of cigarettes in Chicago to $11. Just something interesting off topic. We have a breaking announcement. Hold on.
Jessica.
Mr. President, to your question, what could you do? First of all, couldn't you just have them down here and refuse to let them leave the room until you have a deal?
Jessica, I am not a dictator. I'm the president. So ultimately.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Maybe we should hear that again.
Yeah, it sounded like you had a hard time admitting that.
Yeah. Let's analyze this.
Jessica.
Mr. President, to your question, what could you do? First of all, couldn't you just have them down here and refuse to let them leave the room until you have a deal?
Jessica, I am not a dictator. I'm the president. So ultimately.
I am not a dictator. This coming from President Obama's mouth himself. I'm not a dictator. I'm the president. So ultimately, if Mitch McConnell or John Boehner say we need to go catch a plane, I can't have Secret Service block the doorway, right? And I don't know what context or whatever he was trying to say there, but the way he said that, I'm not a. I swear, I'm not a dictator. Darn it. No, but really, that's what it sounded like. Like he was struggling.
But
I'm not the king.
but see, doesn't that too? Look, George Bush reference. Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm sorry for keep interrupting. Somebody in chat said, I am not a crook. And you mentioned earlier, when has the president ever had to say, I'm not a dictator?
Exactly.
When has the president ever had to say, I'm not a crook?
Well, isn't it funny, though, because people talk about the continuity of agenda and about the fact that there's just this one ideology now, regardless of party. Obama saying he's not a dictator. George Bush, George W. Bush, saying that referencing the Constitution as a blankety blank piece of paper. Also making references in various meetings about not having to follow the Constitution. The skids were greased over multiple administrations to get where we are right here. You see, Obama, once again, one of my good friends, a source, said that we get the government we work for, earn, and deserve. We get the government we work for, earn, and deserve.
Yeah, and sadly, we have been blindsided, manipulated and blindsided, to the point where we were too careless, too content, too trustworthy to let things in Washington, let the people who know what they're doing, the people who are in office, take care of what they need to take care of. They're not going to, do anything to endanger us or our lives. We have had that attitude for much too long. Before we go to break here, I want to play two quick audios, okay? This first audio is going to be quick. This is Rachel Maddow talking about the situation in Detroit, Michigan, where the governor has announced an emergency manager to take control of the financial situation in Detroit. Through fiat, really. And she's right about that part. And listen to this.
We have reported on this show about Michigan a lot, specifically about stuff that Republicans are doing in Michigan that nobody else is even trying to get away with anywhere else in the country. In what is one of the most radical things being done by Republicans in any state government, Michigan Republicans have been abolishing democracy at the local level, overriding local election results to get rid of your locally elected officials.
Okay. First thing, democracy. Overriding your official election results to get rid of your...
Wait a minute.
Hold on.
Are we in a democracy? Go on. Go ahead.
Yeah. She said overriding, the Republicans have taken a step nobody else has taken in Michigan, overriding the election results to implement what they want. Well, let's hear what Rachel Maddow said on the 8th of February. Last year.
Proposition 8 does violate the United States Constitution. Proposition 8 served no purpose and had no effect other than to lessen the status and human dignity of gays and lesbians in California. Joining us now, former Solicitor General Ted Olson.
The people that we're representing and others like those people are not asking for anything special. They're asking for the right to be...
Okay. She was talking about Proposition 8, where the voters voted in favor of banning gay marriage, and the Supreme Court overturned it, calling it unconstitutional. Now,
just to be clear, wait a second. Okay, so the Supreme Court banning gay marriage, or they banned gay marriage?
The voters banned gay marriage. That was Proposition 8 they voted on.
All right. What did the Supreme Court do?
Supreme Court overturned it, calling it unconstitutional. Overturned the people's vote, calling the people's vote unconstitutional.
Okay.
Yes, now we hear Rachel Maddow praising that decision. Today, she's saying because Republicans in Michigan are overturning election results, your election results, to put in other elected officials, or you could substitute that with other laws. It's the most draconian and crazy thing she's ever seen, blaming the Republican Party. But it's the same difference.
Right, it's just different.
I hope you guys see the hypocrisy there. And I know it's a stupid issue as far as...
I don't think it's a stupid issue. I think it's a good catch.
It's bringing the right-left into it, but I just got to call it like I see it, and that was one thing I caught her on today. And
I think that was a great catch, and I think that you know, where in the Constitution, look, we are all created equal. Okay, it does. Look, it doesn't matter if you. Well, I'm not going to get into that, folks. You guys know. You guys know.
yeah, on the other side, the third hour of the show tonight, we're going to be taking your phone calls. So get on hold. The number is 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839.
Before we wait a second, before we go to the break, I just want to because this is kind of time sensitive. I got an email here. I just want to say hello. I'm not going to mention. I'll just mention you as. I just want to say hello to Tom. Tom is listening to us right now at Camp Marmal, Afghanistan.
Wow.
He's okay. I just want to say hello to you, Tom.
Thank you for your service.
Well, he's actually a contractor. He's in his third year at Camp Marmal, Afghanistan. He just says this: I want to send out my appreciation for your broadcast, enjoying them, etc., and complimenting Steve Quayle, Greg Evenson, Russ Dizdar, Tom Horn, and others, and saying what amazing men in Christ. Tom, indeed. Now, Tom works 12 hours a day, but he routinely listens to us as well as Pastor Paul Begley. And he says, if I don't get a chance to listen, it feels like there's a big hole, especially when he's working into the night. So I just want to say, Tom, thank you for listening all the way in Camp Marmal, Afghanistan. God bless you, and turn up the volume and let others hear it if that's possible. Again, God bless you. Thank you so much for all of the work you're doing.
And all the people in the chat room say hello, Tom.
All right, Tom, you got your support, because I know you're not listening, or you're not in the chat room. You're not listening there. Just want to say you've got the support of our interactive chat listeners. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the first day of March 2013. My name is Doug Hagmann. With me is my son, Rod Dimension, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And we'll be right back after these short messages. Stay with us. Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilida Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
It's getting pretty nasty. Take us behind the scenes a little bit. The allegations being hurled against you right now.
Well, I mean, you're
used to this kind of stuff, but share with our viewers what's going on between you and the White House.
Well, they're not happy at all, and some people kind of, said, "Look, we don't see eye to eye on this." They never really said, though. Afterwards, they've said that this is factually wrong, and it was said to me in an email by a top.
What was said? Yeah,
it was said very clearly. You will regret doing this.
Who sent that email?
Well, I'm not going to say.
Was it a senior person at the White House?
A very senior person. And just as it makes me very uncomfortable to have the White House telling reporters, you're going to regret doing something that you believe in, and even though we don't look at it that way, you do look at it that way. And I think if Barack Obama knew that was part of the communications strategy. Let's hope it's not a strategy, that it's a tactic that somebody's employed. Say, look, we don't go around trying to say to reporters, if you, in an honest way, present something we don't like, that you're going to regret this. It's Mickey Mouse.
How do you think this is all going to end up, real quick? I mean,
that's the question. That's exactly the right question, and hopefully they fix it. They should do something. There is an irrationality in this. I mean, just pull back for a second. You've got Leon Panetta. I guess he's still Secretary of Defense, isn't he? No. Hagel has been sworn in. Okay. Panetta, the essence of the Democratic Party, saying these cuts are going to be a catastrophe. You've got on the political right somebody like Bill Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard, saying exactly the same thing, that this is a danger to national security. So they ought to fix it. If they don't fix it, I mean, the public is going to go, finally, they're already in a grow-up mode.
We got more to talk about
in Washington.
Those of us who have known you for a long time, we know you're not going to be intimidated or threatened by any senior official. That's the way you've gone through a lot worse than this. But
I promise you, the president has a big stick.
Doug Hagmann, one guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special third hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this first day of March 2013. With me is Joe Hagmann. I'm Doug Hagmann, father and son investigative team. Thank you so much for continuing your support of our show through prayers, through telling other people about it. It's expanding exponentially, and it's greater than anything that we've ever expected. Praise God for that. And thank you for that. I want to get right into something Joe mentioned earlier about Bob Woodward.
And we just played the audio of him talking about being threatened by the White House.
Now, why was he threatened? Because he said something about the president. Was that correct?
Yes. I don't remember exactly what he said, or he said about the president's decision to cut something. I think it was to cut something or some policy decision the president was making. He said it was very dangerous.
Well, okay, from the Washington Post. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to go there. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not underestimate what is taking place with Bob Woodward. There was a threat to Mr. Woodward. Mr. Woodward took it, made it public. The threat was made in private. It's now, depending on what you read, you might read that it was made via email. The story is being distorted. It is being twisted. It is being minimized. Look, this is a man, whether or not you like him or not, he did expose some controversy. He exposed some skullduggery and crimes in the Nixon White House. He's not on the most favored list of people such as Gordon Liddy. Okay, I mean, there is, Bob Woodward was at one point what one would call a respected investigative journalist. Now, that his activities were glamorized in the film about Watergate, where I think he was portrayed by Robert Redford in that film. It's back in the late 70s. But here's the issue. The gloves are off inside the Beltway. the marginalization, once you begin to marginalize publicly individuals like Bob Woodward, regardless of their bias, political bias, or social or ethical bias, or social bias, or political bias, regardless of that, once you start threatening, and yes, there was a threat, and yes, it came directly from the executive office, you are now seeing tyranny in action. And this, I just would urge everyone to understand that Mr. Woodward went public, and I can guarantee you that there is, well, from my knowledge of this situation through someone who is familiar with the situation, you're only getting half the story. The threats were extremely severe. You're not getting the full story on the news. But Woodward is protected. He is an elitist inside the Beltway. So they're not going to take him down necessarily, but he felt the need to take it public. Once again, important to understand the mechanics of this, because once you start going after the Woodwards, then you are going to see the marginalization and ultimate sanction of people like, well, people like Alex Jones, people like Rick Wiles, people like Doug and Joe Hagmann, people like everyone who is getting the truth out there effectively. This is taking place. Now, there was an admission today. I'm not going to get into it because I don't have all of the facts. I was told about it. I was trying to run down the verification of this, but there is a plan to take down every major conspiracy community on the internet that has a United States IP address, for which, by the way, we want to thank Canada Free Press for allowing us to be a part of their community up there, somewhat out of the reach of the United States arm of this global. But please, ladies and gentlemen, take this seriously. And also understand this. I don't drink. I'm not suicidal, nor is Joe.
Nope.
Okay. We don't skydive.
Even in my worst of times in my life, did I ever entertain a suicidal thought.
Okay. And we, based on information that we've got, we understand, and you might think, well, why? I mean, Steve Quayle has talked about this. Greg Evenson talked about this. Ladies and gentlemen, understand the time is here where the truth bearers are under threat.
Yeah, and you guys don't see a lot of it, and we don't talk about it. Emails, different phone calls, and threats, veiled threats, sometimes not veiled threats. But we always talk and ask ourselves, when are these going to stop being through communications and start being, in your face and real?
We've got some of the most vile and vicious recordings I have, and you know what? I'm going to leave it at that. Understand this: there is and there will be an increase in this to take place. So please do not minimize, regardless of what especially if you're over the age of 45 or 50, you know about Bob Woodward. You understand what he did. You understand, even though there was a politicalization of his motives were political as well as investigative. He was driven by a certain political ideology. Aside from that, understand that he is an elitist. No one's going to take him out necessarily unless he poses a real threat, but there's a level of protection that he's got because of his stature and because of what he's done in D.C. But see, now the gloves are off, and they will be starting to come against people who don't have that insulation, that is, who do not have that insulation. So I just want to mention that. Please understand this is an important story. Do not minimize it.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go to phone calls as people have been on hold. We want to thank you for holding. 661-244-9839 is the number. We're going to go to, I think this is Jose. I'm not sure. Jose, coming from Skype. You're live on the Hagmann Report.
All right. Yeah,
What's up, Jose?
I've been listening to you guys now for the... I've been just listening to you guys. I mean, I've heard of you guys, and I never really stepped into to listen to any of your shows until tonight. And I said, this is a good idea. And the thing that I find very interesting about your show so far is that 4 times in the short time that I've been listening, you guys have mentioned the number one problem between the people from Canada and the people from the United States, if you want to call it that. It comes down to what one's personal status, lawful status, is. I mean, either you're a subject citizen, and citizen means subject, and subject means serf. Serf means slave. Okay, either you're that, or you're not that. And if you are that, then all laws apply to you. Okay?
All right.
And people, you guys have mentioned this. That's why this one guy that you were just now talking about, that's why he is untouchable. That's why all the elitists are untouchable, because they are not subject citizens. They're not citizens of the U.S. They're not citizens of hardly anything. They have returned to their birthright status. Okay? Now, you two guys, you're very intelligent. You guys should have already figured all this stuff out by now. It shouldn't take some dumbutt like me to come out and point this stuff out to you.
What the language?
You guys should be spreading this.
The language that they use for describing the people of this country, they don't actually mean people in terms of humans. Is that what you're saying?
It goes right back into law.
Right.
What your status is per law. And if you're untouchable in the law, at the most, I mean, really, at the most that you're ever going to get touched for is murder, rape, or hurting somebody else's property or their body.
Yeah. And we've discussed this, and this is why they go after the sovereign citizens movement so hardly.
That's
because,
the problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Jose, I just want to say this. If this is your first time listening, then understand this. There are people listening to us who are at different levels of understanding, so we're talking to a kind of a wide array of people, so we have to sometimes go back and forth, okay? So rather than give them a complete 7-course meal all at once, well, we bring it out piece by piece. So that's kind of our method, okay?
No, I do the whole 7-course meal in one shot. But the problem with the word sovereign and citizen is sovereign means master. That's all it's ever really meant. And citizen has always meant slave. So a person calling themselves a sovereign citizen, they're telling everybody, hey, I'm a master slave. I'm the top slave. Really? You are? That's what you are? The top slave? How about we go back to what your birthright nationality is? See, I'm in process right now of dropping my U.S. citizenship. It's going away. I'm sick of it. What is my citizenship going to be after that? It's going to be my birthright citizenship, where I was born. I was born in a country known as Colorado. That's all. That's what we have here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. That's what the U.S. consisted of, is 50 countries. And see, that's the problem, is that they don't teach us this stuff in school when they should, when they're teaching us government and civics in the 4th, 5th, 6th grade.
Well, you're exactly correct, and a lot of people get confused by that, Jose, about the different countries of origin, if you will, that comprise the United States or the states. Um, but go on. I don't want to. I don't want to sully or complicate what you're saying. But what's the bottom line here, Jose? What's the bottom line here? What are you saying ultimately?
Okay, let's take the gays for example, right? I'm not anti-gay. I'm not pro-gay. But why do they even want to be U.S. citizens anymore? You know, all they ever get is repressed, suppressed, oppressed by being U.S. citizens. Get out of the system. If you're not wanted, leave. If you see that you're not wanted, don't force yourself upon it. Get the heck out. I see I'm not wanted. If they wanted me in the system, they wouldn't be ripping me off at every turn. They wouldn't be coming over and crushing me just because I'm driving down the road or any of that other stuff. You know?
Okay. Well,
I'm getting out.
Jose, God bless you, my friend. Look, I understand what you're saying, and I think that the only disagreement I would have with you is if you look at the Constitution. Do you believe in the United States Constitution?
I know.
As it stands?
Yeah, I know the Constitution.
But do you believe?
As a matter of fact, I know that it doesn't apply to me, dude. I'm not a co-signer.
Okay. All right.
I did not sign it. That document does not apply to me. I did not sign it. The only part of that document that ever really applies to me is the 14th Amendment that makes me a citizen of what's known as the United States. And you define the United States by the way they start their documentation over there in the District of Columbia. It says, the United States in Congress assembled. That is the United States. It is Congress assembled. That's all it's ever been.
Right. Then you get into then you get into corporate entities and a whole slew of other matters. Jose, look, thank you for your call. I appreciate that. We got to move on, but interesting take on things. God bless you, my friend. I hope you keep listening. We got to move on very quickly here. Steve, Steve, are you there, my friend?
Yeah.
Steve, you're my man.
I am here and well. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I don't know whether you heard me talking about this the other day. I thanked you on air. My gosh, I want to ask you a question, and then we'll get into the. Yes, Steve. Did you make that?
Oh, okay.
Did you make?
The bird has landed.
Yes.
This is what Steve.
The eagle.
If you're on video watching us through Christians United,
I see Joe holding it.
Did you make that?
That's hand done in ceramics. Yes, sir.
I want to say, Steve, when I got that, I had a lump in my throat the size of an apple. I want to say that it's one of the most touching things that anyone's done for me, sent to me.
And you know, Steve, my grandmother collected eagles, and she did ceramics too, and we have a bunch of those of her eagles around here, so it fits in very nicely.
So I want to say, God bless you.
Look at the bottom of that, Doug. It has
I did.
Grace, 1977. Okay.
Yeah,
Grace was my mother, and she started the ceramic classes when my brother got killed in 1970. And from there, she increased her, then she went to school and became a certified teacher, and she had 3 different studios. And when I came back from Vietnam, pretty banged up and in a wheelchair, I was learning to do ceramics. But that eagle was one that was made at a different seminar that myself, my father, and my mother, so I have 2 other ones that look just like it almost. Okay, because everybody paints different. You've probably seen that guy on TV that used to paint and have a class, and everybody would paint an object.
Oh, yes.
It's the same object, but it looks different because 3 or 4 or 20 people in the class had painted it. Okay, so you wouldn't believe the hassle that I went through to get that to you, because I told you I was very sick, and I promised you I don't care if it snowed 20 inches. I was going up in my wheelchair to make sure you were going to get that. Well, that was actually sent out on the 2nd of February.
Well, I got to tell you, Steve, they used a pony to bring it to me because, but I was so glad when I got it. Like I said, I had both Joe and I mean, we looked at each other.
Did you get the pictures with that too?
Yes, yes. Oh, yes.
I sent some pictures of me with some people that you should know.
You're a handsome guy, by the way.
So you know my legal background.
Yes.
And you see, one is a judge, actually.
Yes.
In the Supreme Court.
Yes. I don't know how far you want to expose, so I'll let you say what you want to say because I don't know how far you want me to describe the photographs.
I do have my pride, so we'll just leave it at that. But
I was actually shocked. I mean, surprised. I was surprised when I saw the photographs. Ladies and gentlemen, just to really quickly tell you what we're talking about.
You can show the photographs if you want.
I have them actually elsewhere.
They were just a copy. I printed them on my printer, and I'm not too smart when it comes to printing and everything. In fact, I really struggled going to law school because I didn't know anything about computers, I mean, I used to be an air-conditioned guy and everything, but after getting beat up for 15 years in family division, well, you know what I did to family division. We turned that place upside down and got people, dismissed, and I started collecting lawyers' licenses at that point.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, you're a scary dude in more ways than one. But ladies and gentlemen, what Steve did was sent me sent Joe and I just a tremendous a piece of artwork and a statue of an eagle. It's just gorgeous, and it's from the 1973, and it means a lot to Steve. I can tell you this: Joe and I will take very, very good care of it. You never have to worry about that. And of course, the photographs were astounding. When I looked at first, I looked at I could pick you out, and then I'm thinking, wait a minute. the people that you are with are very well known. And but like I said, I don't know how far you want me to take that, but I just thought that was so nice of you, my friend.
If you look at the pictures, you'll see my wheelchair or my scooter because they actually picked me up to hold me, So I wasn't. You can see the front handlebars of my scooter there in the one picture. But
well, a true American hero.
All those people in those pictures are very, very well known in the legal field that have won cases that were unbelievable, and I take a lot of pride in my legal research. And when I speak to you on the phone about, like when we were talking about the attack over Benghazi, and I gave you some of my resources about the money and Hillary and everything. So I've got some resources out there. And last time I spoke to you, a couple of days before the Pope was going to resign, I told you some things that, you kind of was like, wow, what's, and 2 days after it came out. So I was like, when I tell you something, Doug, it's coming from resources that, are either there or pretty close to there, or, I don't say I have direct knowledge, but the resources I got are pretty well connected, like the people that I'm connected with in the legal field.
Well, Steve, let me ask you this. What can you share with our listeners right now that perhaps we might not know that's coming down the pike that you see that we should be focused on?
Well, I'm afraid for this country, Doug, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm afraid what's coming, that it can't be stopped. They don't want to stop it. And once it happens, that the people that's in charge now that drove us to this needs to be snatched up and put in jail for what they've done to the country. And what they're doing right now, they're raping, robbing, and stealing everything that they possibly can before this system crashes. And that's the only thing that's holding it up right now, is because they want to collect every last dime, nickel that they can. And my sources are telling me somewhere around the 15th of this month or next month, big-time martial law is going to hit, troops in the street, and like I told you before, a long time ago, about Russian troops up in Erie, and you said you'd check into that, and I kind of left it at that, but I haven't heard anything about that. But things are going to start happening.
Yeah, I was able to verify a small number for cross-training purposes that were not actually out of Erie, but actually out of, it was my understanding, Ohio, let's put it that way.
Yeah, in a general area, right.
Right. So, no, you're correct on that, and I could not believe that you were right on the money with that. But folks, so what Steve is saying is, and what was confirmed with my source as well, look, we are going to be pitted against each other, and the elite are going to come in and take what's left over. I mean, they're not done plundering and pillaging us yet. And once that happens, the go signal for pitting neighbor against neighbor, son against father, brother against brother will happen. And then after that, of course, after that's all said and done, they're going to come in and really oppress us and show us what real gulags are. And that's kind of the order in which it's going to take place. But Steve, you're absolutely correct, my friend.
Well, like I mentioned in one of my conversations, I don't know if it was with you or with maybe the Peeps and Telly show or somebody like that, but if you recall when Saigon fell and they came in, they killed everybody, Doug. I mean, everybody, every living thing, and I'm not going to say that's going to happen because I don't know what's going to go on. Nobody does, We're just assuming. But I remember that, okay? And I wake up to that and just imagining everybody just getting, why do you think they bought all these bullets for? They're bad shots, I don't buy it. So my thing is, when it breaks loose, like you said, brother against brother, I don't know what to say other than told you so. Get ready, because it's coming, and people they want to go out and buy their big screen TVs, and they want to do this. Doug, I'm not buying anything that I don't have to, okay? And when they stop the welfare checks and the food stamps, that's going to be things, and I've been noticing things in the grocery stores, like complete shelves are missing from aisles, and, one store that's local here, they used to have their shopping carts outside, and it's been like that for 30, 40 years. And inside the store, where the shopping carts would normally be at, was all set up with like potato chips and pretzels and all that. So it was like an aisle, but they still had another aisle inside the store that had the potato chips in that. You follow what I'm trying to say? But
absolutely.
Now they moved the shopping carts that used to be outside to compensate for that empty space, because they moved all the other stuff away.
Steve, it's all an illusion. See, it's all an illusion. That's correct. And they're widening the aisles. If you've noticed that, some of the larger changes, and they're removing aisles, so they're actually decreasing their inventory. And by the way, Steve and listeners, they're decreasing their workforce as well. The number of employees. You've got to have noticed this. But this is all part of the larger plan. You're exactly right, Steve. Right on.
Gas is going to go up to around $8-9 a gallon, I was told, somewhere during the summertime. And if you notice, it's been creeping up now. Within the last month, it's gone up 50 cents. So it's going to start going up. And I heard Joe mention that about the cigarettes, $11 a pack.
In Chicago.
Okay, so you can see this is, little bits and pieces. It's so minor, people don't notice it, but the poor, we notice it. And
Yeah,
the rich are all, they're set.
I saw a report today. They
they're
said that gas could go down, actually, in the short term. But it would not
it's gonna go
surprise
down,
me.
but then it's going to go up to $11 come summertime, and this is, what I was told. But you know what I mean? I could be misled too. I'm just going by what somebody told me. And
Yeah, you're right. I've got the same information. And ladies and gentlemen, listen to this and listen to Steve, because I'll tell you something. You might see a temporary decline while oil is at $90 a barrel, but
I
through
think it's higher than that now, but okay.
Okay, well, through the debasement and devaluation of our currency, it's going to get the oil is going to go higher, and like I said, we are one Middle East crisis away from the choke points from being closed off, the threat of the free flow of oil reaching America. At that point, the game is on, and it's going to go hot.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I thought I saw something that said 117. It's 100. It's 92.
Okay, so I was close. But Steve, just want to say God bless you. Thank you so much for your gift. I'm going to be talking to you or sending you something off air, and I just want to say you're a blessing to this program. You're a hero to many.
I have one request for you guys. Well, actually two. Number one is, Joe, take care of your dad. I always end my conversation with Dad. Joe, take care of your dad, because my dad's gone. Okay.
I was going to ask you.
Gone. I'm the only one that's left here, so I have.
I was going to ask if you knew something I didn't know.
So
Steve,
take care of your dad.
All right, I will do that, Steve.
Finally, the last thing, and this is important because this is for the country here. Okay, and I mean this from my heart, guys, and I hope you understand how serious it is. But the shows that you guys have been putting out there during the last couple months have been outstanding. You got to keep on passing that word. Get back on Pete Santilli's show. Have him come back on your show. All you guys that are out there, you got to team together, and we got to get together, and because that's the only way. It's up to us now. Okay, it's up to us, because everybody else is gone. They're going to take off, so it's up to us. So you guys got to keep on with the Steve Quayle and the Hawk, and Pete Santilli, and Dr. Judy's book. That's the main thing that took this country down the toilet. Okay, if they can do that, just like, remember, Doug, when we were younger, they killed JFK. So that was the start of something. Well, this is the icing when they took these buildings apart in front of everybody's eyes, and everybody was, made to believe this illusion, and that's all it's been ever since that. The kids that got killed, another illusion. They want you to think one thing and do another thing. But if we stick together here right now, it's crucial, because we only got a couple months left here. And if we get enough people up, and I mean up, not on a couch, up, we could maybe, prevent a lot of pain. But the pain's going to start. And, bless you guys. I pray for you guys. And, Joe, take care of your dad.
I'll stop fist fighting them in between breaks.
Take care of your dad.
God
I'll
bless.
talk you on rebound, Doug.
All
Sorry
right,
for
buddy.
taking so much time,
No,
but
that's fine.
I don't
God-
talk just to move my lips. I talk till I say something.
God bless you, sir.
Okay. Thank you,
Take
brothers.
care. Take care, Steve.
Bye-bye.
And Steve mentioned something in there about JFK, and I do remember. Look, on June 4th, 1963, John F. Kennedy signed Executive Order 11110, and folks, you can look it up. 11110. JFK signed that. That had everything to do with undermining the Federal Reserve and taking back the currency of the United States. They knew. The elite, the globalists knew that could not stand. Now, was that part and parcel to what happened to JFK? You look back at Andrew Jackson, twice, two assassination attempts, or the gun jam twice. At point blank range, when Jackson was talking about doing away with the first or second national bank of the United States. Look, folks, it's that serious. And the Federal Reserve and the federal income tax system, people, you've got to understand this is just like Obamacare. It's all about control. It's not about anything. It's not about medicine. It's not about medical care. It's about control. This is a big magic act, and we have to look at who is behind the curtain and expose the people behind the curtain in order to fight the fight.
Yeah, you're right. And we have a lot of fighting to do in the spiritual. We have fighting to do here in the physical.
We
You know, I really believe America's dead and gone. It's never coming back. We'll never see the republic it once was, nor anything that remotely resembles this.
But you know what, Joe? It's going to be our job on the other side to remake it in the image that it was.
Well, I definitely would love to see people be free and flourish and be prosperous. At the same time, we have a society of decadence. We have what it describes in 2 Timothy of how people will act in the last days. Lovers of pleasure, lovers of self, lacking natural affection, truce breakers, prideful, boastful. We talked about this earlier. You asked me, are people just regular people, everyday people, anybody you come across with, do they seem more mean?
I did.
Do they seem more hateful, actually, is what you asked me. And yes, they do. People seem to be moving to one side or the other. And we need to not take part in this. We are called for much better things. And through Jesus, who is the person who strengthens us, as it says, where does it say it? Through all things, we are strengthened through Jesus. He strengthens us in all things. That's not the exact quote, but that is pretty much what it says. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, is what that verse is. That's Philippians chapter 4:13. And the faith, you know, we talked earlier about the Bible, and the only logical solution to what we have seen unfold in the past, what is written about in prophecy, whether 2,500 years ago to today, the prophecies written 2,500 years ago through today have been unfolding, is what we've been seeing. And we don't understand how it works. We don't have all the answers. Nobody does. But faith is described as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, as Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, it describes. Now, we need to have unwavering faith. We need to have patience working on our faith, and we can't be transformed overnight. And that's the beauty of the process. If you're always trying to do better, I mean, what good would it be if you could be transformed overnight? They say for somebody taking a trip, the way there, getting there is half the fun, or the journey is half the fun. Growing in the Lord and growing as a family, a society, a community, when we talk about reaching out to neighbors, when we talk about trying to help others understand what's going on, being in a position to help others maybe to feed other people if there is an economic collapse, and things like this, we are going to need the guidance from the Lord, because there is no way we can do it ourselves. And yesterday you mentioned about hell, and I started getting into what hell lacked, and somebody in the chat room wrote it exactly as I've heard it before, that it lacks all the attributes of the Lord. Now, remember the story of Lazarus and the rich man. When the rich man and Lazarus both passed away, the rich man was begging Lazarus to put a drop of water on the rich man's tongue, because all the attributes that are of God, love, our strength, joy, all these great things that all humans seem to have, but only some, very few, utilize and embrace. All those are gone, in hell. And do you want to spend your soul, because our time on this planet is a microsecond compared to eternity, and our souls are around for eternity, and they go one of two places. Do you want to spend it in eternal torture and anguish, or do you want to spend it with filled with love and ecstasy and joy in heaven with the Lord Jesus Christ? And that's the question you need to ask yourself, and from there make a decision on how you're going to get to heaven, how you're going to find Jesus, how you're going to do his will instead of yours on a daily basis, and it's a daily task.
You know, you mentioned the journey, and I'm going to take it a little bit out of context. Where right now, the American people, we as Americans, we as free people, we in the West, are being led from truth to one of two places. Okay, and we have to ask ourselves, which is it, or is it a combination of both? From truth to lies. You know, are we being lied to? Are we experiencing a transformation of from truth to lies, or is that transformation from truth to madness? And see, if we say, well, we're actually dealing with a transformation from truth into lies. Lies implies that the situation can be corrected and we can get back on track to the truth, whereas madness, that's a whole different level of evil, and you've got to understand that. And Joe, you mentioned about the money, or about the riches. Remember what happened, and this story I was reminded of this story again today in the conversation. Remember, upon Jesus' death, remember what Mary did to the body of Jesus after he died on the cross. She anointed his body with spices and various other expensive ointments and what have you in preparation for the burial. And who was upset about this? It was Judas. It was the guy holding the money, the guy holding the bag. It was all about the money. Judas was upset, saying, Why waste these expensive ointments and spices and earthly riches for this purpose, when in fact we could sell them and make more money? And of course, Jesus had commented, because Judas thought, oh, how wasteful that was, and it just didn't make sense to him. Again, Judas, the bag holder, the treasurer, the trustee of the funds, and of course, Christ said it was a beautiful act, and it's important to understand that in the context of today. Who's holding the money? Who's holding the bag of money? And once again, we have no time for lies. We have no time to be in denial. We have to understand that we have to be at this point. You know, we have to.
We have to have the moral high ground on every aspect of our lives.
Yes.
No matter what problem we encounter, we have to always have the moral high ground that is required of us by the Lord. And it is part of his will, because otherwise we're doing our will. As it says here in Proverbs 24, be not envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. For their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk mischief. Though wisdom is in a house builded, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. A wise man is strong, yea, and knowledgeable, increasing strength. For wise counsel shall make thy war, and in the multitude of counsels there is safety. Wisdom is too high for a fool. He openeth not his mouth in the gate. He that deviseth to do evil shall be called a mischief person. The thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men.
I love that. By the way, I do. I just want to say that I got a message here. You know, the a lot of people right now are in denial of what's taking place. And I had mentioned earlier about some people not taking this too far. Well, the investigation is too far to get to the root cause of what's taking place. Well, those are the people. Those are the people who, when they're talking about the New World Order, are actually making preparations or taking the particular stands because they are attempting to legitimize the situation, to say it's normal, it's okay. They're feathering their own nests. But see, we're talking to people where the only question should be, will you be blindsided? And if with knowledge, you won't be blindsided in the spiritual and mental and practical preparations that you make for yourself and for your family and for your children and grandchildren. Will you be conscripted into slavery, or will you be, or will you not be? Will you be able to stand up and say, wait a second? But then again, are we just saving the flesh? Are we just trying to save the flesh? Of course not, because eternity is what we're after, and our fate in eternity. This is so big, and no one talks about the spiritual preparations, or no one is framing this in that fashion, and we have to get together.
Only very few.
Yes,
We
I
have
shouldn't say
Pastor
no.
Paul Begley. We have RPM.
Right.
People like Rick Wiles. A number of people. Dr. Elizabeth from Tribulation News.
Sure.
Revelation News. They all incorporate the Bible into their shows, and we need to stick together. And I hope everybody would start a show.
Just
or
pass the word.
A blog or anything. Yeah. Talk to the neighbor. Do the things that we've been talking about throughout the week, and that other callers and people have offered us suggestions as ways to not only reach out but help, be in a position to help your neighbors, because they are your brothers. They are, like the Bible says, if you only love your brothers, or you know you're no better than the publicans or the politicians, as they say today. But if you love all people regardless, then are you truly obeying the Word of God?
That's correct. And I just, it's we're looking at too, folks. This gun grab situation. Please understand that a lot of the purchase of ammunition. I was just reminded, to say this again. The purchase of ammunition by the federal government is twofold. Certainly, they've got plans for that. But the other part of this, folks, please understand, there are multiple plans for the same thing. I mean, multiple effects. They're taking the ammunition and getting it away from the people, so the people they're causing shortages, deliberately causing shortages. This is part of their plan. And don't forget too, Obama's anti-gun history from law school, from 1994 when he joined the board of the Joyce Foundation. Folks, it would do you well to remember this and remind others about this. Valerie Jarrett, Deputy Chief of Staff in Chicago, Mayor Daley, supporter of the city's handgun ban. 1999, Obama quoted, Obama wanted a 50% increase in federal taxes on ammunition. We saw what he was doing in 1999. No one said a word. Look what he's doing in 2013. He wanted a 50% tax, federal or 50% increase in federal taxes on ammunition. Now he's got the ability to take ammunition away out of the marketplace. Please understand what's going on. I don't want to sound too dramatic, but it is so dramatic. It is so in our faces. It's right in front of us.
As we've talked about before, the truth is stranger than fiction. Real life is more interesting than the fake life provided to you, shown to you, promoted to you, and that you are supposed to conform to, according to the government and the rest of the society that partakes in that. But really, we are not to conform to anything of this world, whether it be even a popular. I mean, I was talking with somebody about this. Now, what does when the Lord says to not be a part of this world, to remove yourself from this world, what does that entail? What is this world? What do we have to do to make sure we are not, have taken ourselves out 80%? And we came to the conclusion that it is mostly the world is the way society is perceiving it to be. What they tolerate, what they accept, the national teachings, as we see things changing so fast now. Gay marriage is not only okay, it's promoted, it's allowed in churches. If that's the case, you remove yourself from that church. Does it go to the point of you can't have a checking account, you can't, go to the stores that are in this world? I don't know. That is a question that we were debating, but I think that's something that I'm definitely going to be praying about. I know it's something I'm going to be praying about an answer to, and I hope it's something everybody else does, and maybe you guys will get an answer before me, and you can enlighten me, because
We Joe, we have to we're in many cases learning as we go as well, and others, we have to help others and help ourselves learn these things. I just got an email from Renee. Thank you. God bless you, Renee. Jose, she said Jose was referring to becoming a freeman on the land and referenced Rob Menard's videos, and Prophecy Club had a guest on talking about this. And of course, freeman on the land is a reference to people who claim that all statute law is contractual and that such law is applicable only if an individual consents to be governed by it. Sort of like the income tax system where, when you ask, where's the law that income tax is compulsory, is mandatory? There is no law. Let's change the subject. For example, when you sign your income tax form, that's a voluntary assessment, and perhaps we'll get into that more as the tax season approaches, because it's the reason, for example, ladies and gentlemen, that Irwin Schiff is in jail right now. The man is 80 years old, or 80 plus. He's in ill health. Irwin Schiff, his son Peter Schiff. Peter doesn't talk about the plight of his father because of some things that are going on in terms of appeals. But basically, we've got a man in Irwin Schiff who merely asked the question about the legality, the constitutional legality of federal income tax in a courtroom, and the judge said, the Constitution has no place in my courtroom. I am the law. And so this man who refused, for just merely asking a question, was sentenced to a life sentence, or a death sentence, shall we say more appropriately, Irwin Schiff. I would urge everyone to understand the plight of Irwin Schiff, the political prisoner. If there was ever a political prisoner in this country, it's Irwin Schiff, who was sentenced to death, basically, or to die in prison because he had the audacity to ask about the federal income tax system, the legality of it, and you had a judge say, there's no room for the Constitution in my courtroom. Look how far we've gone down this road, and don't forget the federal income tax, and it could not exist without the Federal Reserve, and vice versa. They operate hand in hand in tandem. It's so important for people to understand this. And look, I've got a lot of respect for Dave Ramsey, but he's wrong on this issue. It's something that we have that we've got to address, because it's all the Federal Reserve and the people behind it, the money barons, the elite, the global governance. You cannot have global governance without central banking, worldwide central banking. That's the whole part of it, and that's what we're fighting, and the people behind it. I know I just covered a lot of ground there, but go ahead and re-listen to that again, and I think you'll get it. But understand the plight of Irwin Schiff, and understand he's a political prisoner of the United States.
It's the end of the broadcast already.
No.
Yes, it is. We got 1 minute left, and I just want to say thanks to each and every one of you
90 seconds.
for being with us tonight. Next week, we have L.A. Marzulli scheduled. I think that's Wednesday, the 6th. Yep, Wednesday.
Oh, that should be a great show, folks.
And I got a couple invites out, waiting for responses. Hopefully I get them, and if I do, we'll have some pleasant surprises.
I got to tell you, folks.
I haven't told even you about this.
Really?
About some of them.
I got one on the hook that's going to blow your mind. Everyone knows this
60
person's
seconds.
name. But all right. Well, look, folks, have a wonderful weekend, and tonight, hit your knees, repent, and pray for our country. Pray for discernment,
and pray for salvation, that as many people as possible can find it.
Absolutely.
Have a great weekend. Stay safe. We will see you next week.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.